Paris, and of course, don't go very far because our Spotlight Politics team is taking a closer look at what happened today at the White House with Governor Pritzker and earlier this week with Police Superintendent David Brown. Here with all that and more are Amanda Vinicky, Heather Sharon, and of course, Paris. Good, you didn't go anywhere. So as we heard earlier, Governor Pritzker met with President Biden today to talk about infrastructure. Amanda, what's in it for Illinois?
What's in it for Illinois, first and foremost, is having a relationship with the White House. This, of course, after you had Pritzker, President Trump butting heads, not getting along. So according to reporting by Cranes, actually, the governor had his own private one-on-one tour of the West Wing with Biden. Pritzker, of course, prior to becoming a governor himself and donating to his own campaign, had given a whole lot of money to Democrats throughout the years. So he says that he and Biden are close friends. So first of all, you have that relationship, and then coming with that relationship, ostensibly, a whole lot of projects and money coming to Illinois. That, of course, would be great timing for the governor, even as you have sort of the national prognosticators saying that Pritzker won't be in any trouble in 2022 as he's assumed to make his bid for a second term. Nonetheless, it sure can't hurt to be able to brag about having a whole lot more federal matching funds in Illinois being poised because of a law that he signed that puts Illinois in the position for that.
Now, anybody who has maybe driven around knows that, the infrastructure needs some work. It needs some support. Is the president preaching to the choir here?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a sense, he certainly was. He did bring it wasn't just Governor Pritzker who was in this meeting. There was also some Republican representation. This is part of sort of a broader fight because while there does appear to be a bipartisan deal on what is known as sort of the more traditional description of infrastructure, roads, bridges, waterways, that sorts of things. And those are elements that Illinois' capital fund, by the way, does not pay for, that we need some federal support to get to. The broader fight is also over things like climate change and sort of this reconciliation package that you hear about.
Now, Senate Democratic leaders announced a possible breakthrough on that $3.5 trillion infrastructure plan that includes addressing climate change, as you just said, expanding Medicare, and help for struggling families for the next decade using reconciliation. Amanda, all 50 Democrats would need to vote for this. Are the progressives on board?
Yes, actually, there has been a lot made about are the moderate Democrats and the more progressive side of the party going to be able to reach an agreement? The thought constantly being no, they're not going to be able to. But in fact, here it seems as if they are on board. You had sort of the leader of the progressive wing, Bernie Sanders, at least one of the leaders, saying that he supports this. For me, I'm a political reporter. We hear a lot about deals. So, in Illinois, they went back to Springfield to pass an electric plan, this big omnibus measure that, lo and behold, didn't happen until you actually had the votes. I, for one, am not going to believe that there is a deal until it is written, signed, sealed, delivered. Nonetheless, yes, you do have progressives backing this a little bit more than Biden had originally introduced, but less than the progressives had wanted. So,
I want to get Paris in here. Paris, what about Senators Manchin and Sinema? They've been the two Democratic swing votes on the conservative side.
Well, I think we're talking about two separate things here. So the $3.5 trillion, that's the budget proposal put out by Senate Democrats that would have to pass by reconciliation, would certainly get no Republican votes. And then the infrastructure package that is bipartisan. And I think with respect to that $3.5 trillion, Manchin himself has said that he's concerned with some of the climate change provisions in there. So that's going to be, the Democrats have no margin for error if they want to pass a vote like this through reconciliation. So they'd lose some of their progressive people like Bernie Sanders if they got rid of some of that stuff. But if they kept it, it seems like they'd lose some of the more moderate members. So they're going to have to negotiate with their own caucus on that bill.
Heather, now Democrats say that it's fully paid for, but how? More taxes?
Well, Amanda's right. This is one of those massive deals where the devil really is in the details. The proposals right now call for increase on wealthy Americans earning more than $400,000 a year, as well as an increase in the corporate tax from about 21% to somewhere around 25%. And there's also a lot of proposals in there that would give more money to the IRS to crack down on what Democratic senators call tax cheats. So these are rich people who use all sorts of tricks and things to avoid paying their fair share. And they say that would be enough to get to that $3.5 trillion mark. But again, until you've got a piece of legislation written and you've got votes counted, this is going to be a very long process. And there is, as Paris said, no room for error.
Now, let's talk about pot. Senate Leader Chuck Schumer is also pushing the legalization of cannabis. Take a listen.
We don't have the votes necessary at this point, but we have a large majority of our caucus for it. We're going to show it to the others and say, well, what don't you like? What do you like? And we'll see if we can get the support. But we're going to put our muscle behind it, our effort behind it, and we are going to get this done ASAP.
Paris, for the state of Illinois, marijuana revenues were in the hundreds of millions of dollars during the pandemic. Are federal lawmakers reading the tea leaves and thinking there should be more for the feds too?
I think that Schumer's move and press conference is more political and more as a motivating factor for the 2022 midterms. Maybe it's something that drives voters to the polls because, you know, the decriminalization of marijuana federally is very popular. Something like 70% of the country supports it, but it doesn't look like it has a majority in any, at least in the Senate. There's some moderate Democrats that are a little wishy-washy about it, and many Republicans that are not so clearly on board. So, I think President Biden hasn't really said he's completely on board. So I think I think Democrats like voting rights. And you saw Dick Durbin last night say there's not going to be any action on the voting rights bills. I think they're talking a lot about this now because they want action, but same with marijuana. It's something that's a popular issue that perhaps can help motivate their voters in 2022.
So shifting to someone else who was at the White House this week, Police Superintendent David Brown. Here's what he said yesterday about the additional law enforcement coming. Take a look.
The strike force will focus on the flow of guns, which includes buyers and sellers of illegal guns. We'll have more to come. We'll have more to come on that particular issue. We'll roll out this strike force plan.
Okay, so Superintendent Brown saying more to come. We know that Attorney General Garland and President Biden said that more ATF agents will be sent for the strike force, but we know that Brown isn't giving a whole lot of details. Paris, what makes this federal help different from previous years and previous presidents' federal help?
I really wish I could answer that, Brandis, because as you mentioned, he's saying more details will come. And it seems like every administration and attorney general have promised things like more federal agents to come in and tackle gun violence and to help solve gun crime. And given the fluctuating rates over the last several years, it's really negligible whether that federal help really has made a dent in any of this gun violence. So it seems like they want to go after illegal purchases, although I should say that federal and Illinois state laws are very lax when it comes to being able to track down lost or stolen weapons or illegal purchases. There isn't even an electronic database of gun purchases. By law, gun stores are not allowed to keep that. So intentionally, these laws are pretty tricky to enforce. So we'll have to see what the superintendent's referring to.
Meanwhile, Heather, Mayor Lightfoot has focused on the flow of illegal guns coming into the city. Senator Durbin on our show just yesterday said that gun legislation isn't really realistic. How can officials stem the flow of illegal weapons, illegal guns?
This is really the crucial question. And when Lightfoot is asked about what needs to be done to stamp down the violence that has really swept the South and West Side in the last couple of weeks, that's her answer. Her answer is we need comprehensive gun control. And when sort of confronted with the fact that that's not going anywhere in the Senate anytime soon, she's really been at a loss. Now, the mayor's also increased funding for things like violence prevention programs, and she's sort of pushed a whole of government approach where she has every city department responsible for reducing violence. But again, that's not very different than we've seen in years past. And it, of course, has yet to really show any sort of meaningful change in reducing violence.
Now, in City Council, Heather, Chicago City Council members are going to start drawing new ward boundaries for the next decade. What happened today?
Well, we are just a couple of weeks away from the opening of the map room at Chicago City Hall, and that is where aldermen will crowd around computers with special mapping software, and they will get down to the nitty-gritty of dividing the city into 50 wards of about 54,000 people each. And it is really going to shape the balance of power in the city for the next decade. And I am so excited that it's finally happening.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall, Heather. But is this the same old backroom dealing that's going on without an independent commission to draft the maps?
It absolutely is. It's not any different than the way it worked in 2011 or 2001 or back in the 90s or back in the 80s. And that is not what Mayor Lori Lightfoot promised when she was elected. She said that that was really a relic of the past and that that Chicago needed to bring sunshine into the process. But politicians are traditionally loath to give up their own power, and there's no greater power than picking your own voters, and that's what's about to start happening at Chicago City Hall.
Yeah, perhaps the only change might be that the software is even better, and so that you can get more precise about choosing your voters.
And this,
That's perhaps the only change.
And the mayor campaigned on it. She came on Chicago Tonight talking about when we need to have maps that are contiguous to their neighborhoods and not a neighborhood like Englewood divided up into six wards. But what happened 10 years ago, what this always is, and what it's going to be this year, it sort of becomes sort of a battle between Latino aldermen, African-American aldermen, white aldermen, because as Heather's mentioned on this show, you've got the population of the black population in Chicago going down, but black aldermen do not want to lose the number of seats they have. Latino population has gone up. They want to gain proportional amount of seats, and this is where sort of the backroom deal making happens. And the mayor is going to have leverage here she needs all the support and allies on city council she can get. She has leverage in this process.
Paris, to that end, what is she doing to move it to the present, to the future?
If I could get into the mayor's head, I would tell you, I don't know. All I know is what she has said in the past. I'm sure she's serious that she doesn't want these neighborhoods to be carved up into 6 different wards. That doesn't do constituents any good. But again, this is African Americans, they want to keep the number of seats they have, and so she's got a little leverage there. Latinos want to gain seats because they've gained population. She's got leverage there, and they're chits that she can use.
Now, Heather, the state eviction ban is officially ending. You reported on this today. What does this mean for people who are behind rent due to the pandemic?
Well, it means that their reprieve from eviction court proceedings is ending and ending very soon. Now, the governor said, it's been 17 months. It's time to get sort of back to the normal order of business now. There is still a significant number of rental assistance grants available that people who are behind can apply for through Sunday. And he encouraged people to do that. But the fact of the matter is that the state has already received requests for more than $700 million in help. The state only has about $500 million in this round. There will be more money available in the fall, but we are about to see whether this fears of eviction tsunami hitting the state and the city, we are about to see whether those concerns are going to prove true.
And briefly, COVID-19 infection rates are ticking up with the new, more transmissible Delta variant. Amanda, I'm going to let you have the last word quickly. With all this happening, is there confusion over masking students for the fall semester?
There most certainly is. Right now, you have the State Board of Education following CDC guidelines, which call for masking for those who have not been vaccinated. And by the way, that, of course, is younger children who are not even eligible. But there's a lot of pushback, a lot of concern from parents at this point in time.
Okay, thanks to our Spotlight Politics team. As usual, Amanda Vinicky, Heather Sharon, and Paris Schutz.